let you introduce them, seeing as how you're...
Oh, well, tonight we have the pleasure of hearing a talk from my friend Waris Faridi, and we're going to talk about the eye inquiry, which is very interesting, heady, metaphysical stuff. And I'll just go ahead and turn it over now to Waris.
Thank you. Since we were going to talk about the initiation, especially the higher initiations, as taught by esoteric disciplines like Theosophy, I'm going to give an introduction of eye inquiry as self-knowledge, and then bring into the subject of the initiations and then how it references the higher initiations. The Indian philosophy of Advaita, it literally means no duality. And those who study it, pursue it, and live it are either Advaitis or teachers of Advaita. And the discipline is also sometimes called Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, the path of direct knowledge, as opposed to Karma Yoga, the path of action, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, and Hatha Yoga, the physical exercises. The path of self-knowledge is Jnana Yoga. The Indian ancient tradition always taught is the highest path, the direct path, the golden road. But they also taught that most people are not ready for that path. It takes a good deal of development of the mind to be able to follow that. So the path most recommended is the path of bhakti, devotion, singing devotional songs and just devotion to a higher being, chanting their name and all that. But the goal of all spiritual discipline, all seeking, is eventually that, is to bring you to a state where you can know yourself to be that one reality. Why it's called Advaita is because all spiritual discipline also seeks the same goal, is to end all duality, no matter in what way it's taught. So if Jesus says, perfect love casteth out fear, then we really pay attention to those words and we really ponder on it, then we realize that perfect love cannot exist if there's separation. Perfect love cannot exist if we live in duality. But the path does not begin with that. The path, and I will talk about the initiations now a little bit. The concept of initiations was taught by Theosophical Society at the end of the 19th century. Those teachings were given by the Ascended Masters to the world, and that was the first time that the Eastern esoteric philosophy was given to the Western world in a very rational form, in a way they could understand without any direct reference to Eastern teachings. the path of initiation is when a soul through the cycle of initiation reaches a certain point of ripening, a certain maturity, then the masters tune in and seek out those souls who are ready. And the first thing they do is they will put that soul on the path of probation. That is the period before the first initiation. The path of probation, there's no set time how long that may take. And how the probation is done is the master energizes the person's bodies, the inner bodies, inner vehicles, with a certain amount of energy. And then he watches how that person would handle that energy. And based on that, would consider it ready for the first initiation. In the teachings of initiations, it is taught that all spiritual beings inwardly go through the path of initiation. And all of them go through those stages, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth initiation marks the completion of the path. And the moving out of the soul outside the limitation of this planetary human life. It also marks complete end of the cycle of experience as experiencer and experience, the duality. And there is life and individuality beyond that, but it is not easy for the human mind to understand that life, because it does not constitute anything that the three-dimensional mind can understand. It's divine life. The period between the first to the fourth initiation is generally 10 lifetimes. That period is how it is in this age. In some distant age, that may change. The path may be done in 2 lifetimes or 3 lifetimes. The longest period that lapses between initiations is between the first and the second initiation. And that's about 6 to 7 lives. And the period between the second and third is 1 to 2 lives, and the third to fourth is also 1 to 2 lives. So the second initiation marks a very essential and powerful stage in the journey of the soul to perfection, because it marks the subjugation by the inner man of the emotional body, the emotional control. Emotions, that's where the battle is being fought right now. That's where what we call the mind in most humanity is 80% emotions. And if you have overcome emotions, when I say emotions, I mean the lower pull of emotions, soap opera. All that you see in soap opera.
Good analogy.
That's how you understand. And it also marks and I have not mentioned this in my previous talks because it was an understanding that came afterwards very clearly. The triumph of love and the soul nature over ego, becoming 51%, 51-49. And so from second initiation onwards, the thing that is most marked is the person makes the decisions, all major decisions of life. Where you live, who your friends are, what your job, what kind of job, marriage, everything. An impulse from the soul. The mind is still has to be, the reactive mind is still there. Duality is still there. But something major has happened. And because of the control of emotions, there is so much loss of energy not taking place, dissipated, that the mind suddenly gains tremendous depth. And because the mind gains so much depth, the mind for the first time, it starts to be a guide. It starts to show the way. You start to understand the reasons of your unhappiness. You start to understand life. You start to understand conflict. You start to understand how things work. And so you want to live by that understanding. And that's what brings a speed on the path. Tremendous speed on the path. Also, like I said, even though the reactive mind is still there, the quality of inwardness, you can call that meditation or the meditative mind. Since I'll be coming back to meditation and the meditative mind again and again, I'll just give a 5-minute introduction to meditation and meditative exercises, because as I do in my talk discussion on meditation, is that in the way the saints use the word meditation is not meditative exercise, which we all generally call meditation, is sitting cross-legged and practicing to have our mind quiet. But as is talked about in scriptures or in reference to what saints call meditation, meditation is when the reactive mind has subsided enough, so a quality of inwardness, of pure witnessing starts to take place without the duality of the observer and the observed. It just begins at the second initiation, after the second initiation. And it will progressively increase as one moves onward to the path.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So as we move to another lifetime, we take this with us, but not in our memory.
Yes.
So we're at that place that we don't necessarily remember it, at least not fully.
Right.
Consciously.
Okay. We can talk about that a little bit, because it's important to understand that. As there is these blue books called the Alice Bailey Teachings that you can read online on lucistrust.org, and I can give you the exact. Joel Kuhl, the master Joel Kuhl, dictated those teachings, and he's saying in one of those books that when you die, what's stored in your causal body, even the tiniest impulse that you've generated in wanting to understand life, higher aspiration, every little thought, every impulse is stored in your body, your causal body. And that in turn creates a vibration in the body, giving it a certain degree of sensitivity. So your aspiration to the higher life has created a body of a certain sensitivity, together with the diet your friends you had, and the thoughts you thought, all that contributes to that. When you come back in the next incarnation, the body that you have is exactly of the same vibration that you left. So nothing that you have done in this life is going to be lost. Not even the tiniest impulse that you did. It's going to be stored in your causal body as a vibration, and the causal body will bring about a body of the exact same vibration. That should answer your question. So, do you remember where I was exactly? Or?
What meditation is, true meditation.
Meditation, yes. So, meditation is when the reactive mind is not operating and the inner watchfulness of the soul is just witnessing. That's meditation. And that quality of meditation increases as you progress from first the physical, control of the physical, the control of the emotional, the control of the mental. The first initiation marks the control of the physical. When I say control of the physical, it means at least you're not pulled by anything that is a powerful addiction in the body. You've at least you come to a point where you can control the physical. Then the emotional. The third initiation is very powerful and very important. According to the teachings, the first two initiations, the world teacher, there's a world teacher, is the same being as we know as the Christ. He's the world teacher. And the initiations higher than the first two initiations, the Lord of the world, the planetary Logos, is the initiator. And it's the third initiation is a very high initiation from the standpoint that for the first time the light of pure spirit fills the three lower bodies. And that's because there's enough control of the first three principles so that the inner man can handle that kind of a high energy. But there's still duality, but it's just as a point of reference. It's not the mind haywire as it was before, with all kinds of pull into different directions. And so a lot of the saints that you see in this world are third degree initiates. And the reason for that is that most of the fourth degree initiate, at least at the present state of human evolution, when they have to take the fourth initiation, they go so much outside of anything personal that they have almost no reference to the world of name and form. And the third degree initiate is still at kind of a midway point. Is partly divine, the divine world, and still has a reference to our world, threefold world. And so they make the most appropriate teacher because they can still relate to the world, and yet they have a very pure nature, and they can be a conduit for pure, energy, pure light coming down. There's a couple of terms that I will mention. You've heard the term samadhi, right? Samadhi. Samadhi is a term they use in the Vedic to describe the highest state of meditation. The state of perfect peace. You could say the same thing as the Buddhists call nirvana, right? It's the same thing. Where samadhi is from two words, sama and buddhi. Sama means equal or equal-mindedness, and buddhi is the higher mind. Equal-mindedness in the higher mind. So the state of samadhi, one has complete equal-mindedness. That means he's outside of opposites, outside of praise and blame, outside of being disturbed of anything. That's the fourth initiation, complete samadhi. But they use to describe two types of samadhi. One is Kaivalya samadhi, and one is Nirvikalpa samadhi. Kaivalya is the qualified samadhi, is where one goes into this deep state of equal-mindedness, but then comes out to function in the world. That's the third degree initiate. Can go into that kind of a samadhi. And the Nirvikalpa samadhi is totally unconditioned samadhi, and that's the fourth degree initiate. It's always in that state. A very key things that happens that understood esoterically is at the third initiation what we call, or what theosophists would call the soul, which is the causal body, which is what reincarnates. The three lower bodies are mortal. They die at every death, every birth, every incarnation. The physical, emotional, mental. But the lessons learned in those bodies are all contained in tiny little vortexes of energy called the permanent atoms. And they're pulled into the causal body as stored experiences. So every experience is still preserved in the causal body. Through the cycles of incarnation, there's another thing that is good to understand, if you want to really understand the path, is the term called antakarana. Antakarana literally just means internal sense organ. Anta, inner, karana, sense organ. Sense organs are external. But antakarana means internal sense organ. And what the antakarana is, at the lowest point this way is the physical body, and the other end is pure spirit. When you start on the path of initiation, every time you have gained directly through your effort to be inward and understand, and you gain an insight, you have built a strand from the lowest point to the highest point as a bridge. And it's within your causal body. It's a strand of bridge. And the bridge keeps building throughout the cycles of the initiate's life, because antakarana has only to do with the initiate. Before that, you're not interested in the higher, so there's no bridge. And they say that if you see, if a real psychic, not a psychic, fair psychic, a real psychic, could see the bridge, it would be a beautiful bridge of light, every strand, every color strand in there. But at the fourth initiation, both the antakarana as well as the causal body are destroyed, because they're still in duality, because they're still a tool to use in the world to connect to the pure spirit. At the fourth initiation, you have gained yourself full consciousness as a divine being. Therefore, no bridge is needed, which is the goal of human life, according to these teachings. Full self-consciously divine. The perfect coming together of the divine principles of Spirit Father and Matter Mother in yourself. And of course that marks the real state of Advaita. So it is also said that the first two initiations are still Dvaita, which is duality, and you're preparing and walking towards a way out of your duality. The third initiation means, there's a term called Vashist Advaita, qualified non-duality, where you're at a midway point. You can go into a state of non-duality, but you come out and function in the world in a state of duality. And then the fourth initiation, the state of non-duality. There's a way and a path beyond the fourth initiation, this fifth, sixth, seventh and higher initiations, which is the deepening of the divine mind, which is a state very hard to contemplate if we are caught only yet in the dual mind, because that's a state some teacher once explained to me that about the path. And then now that we've described the initiation, with this story we'll start to come back to Advaita and that path of knowledge. And this teacher said to me, I consider this teacher to be divine, said to me that everybody in this world is caught in the work of building from 1 + 1 to 1, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. I'm this, I will become that. I'm striving and seeking to add to what I am, to become better. To even spirituality becomes that. And the teacher said, real life begins with zero.